shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? I give the call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Acting Prime Minister. Because of Labor's economic vandalism, households are paying 15% more for their food, 20% more for their insurance and nearly 40% more for their electricity in the last year alone. Australians are suffering through the largest decline in living standards in the developed world during Labor's cost of living crisis. Why is it that when Labor fails, Australians are always left to foot the bill?
Call to the Acting Prime Minister.
Well, I thank the member for her question. When we became the government in May of 2022, and from that moment onwards, all of our focus has been on putting in place policies which ease cost of living pressures, be it more affordable childcare, be it getting wages going, be it tax cuts, be it cheaper medicines. All of this has been aimed at helping households manage their budgets. Now, what today's figures demonstrate is that Australian households are still under pressure, and we understand that the work is never done, which is why we will continue to pursue cost of living measures. But it is worth noting that even the headline inflation rate today is about half of the headline inflation rate that we inherited when we came to office. And indeed, the core inflation rate today means that for 3 successive quarters, the core inflation rate has been within the Reserve Bank band. And that is in no small part due to the way in which we have been managing in a prudent way the Commonwealth budget. Annual spending growth under our government over the last 3 years has averaged at about 1.2%. When those opposite were in government, the average increase in annual spending was around 4.1%. They doubled debt before the pandemic, and they left us with $1 trillion of debt with absolutely nothing to show for it. And it's because we have been able to turn 2 Liberal deficits into 2 Labor surpluses that we've saved in the last financial year $188 billion on the nation's debt, which in turn means that we will be paying $60 billion less over a decade in terms of interest payments. But let's be absolutely clear. At the last election, those opposite went to the election promising higher taxes, bigger deficit and bigger debt. And that's not us saying it, that's the PBO.
Order.
Heaven knows what Robert Menzies would make of this lot, because their signature policy was a $600 billion state-owned power plant, and the architect of it they have promoted to being the shadow treasurer. They are now big government, big taxing, big spending people now, and that's before the member of Canning gets his hands on it, when we'll be seeing tariffs jacked up. They'll close the door and then look at what happens to inflation.
Order. The member for Goldstein, the member for Durack. Order. The member for Durack, the member for Goldstein and the member for Wright were in full flight during that answer. You may be sitting a fair way away, but I can hear every single word. I've got good hearing today. When the House comes to order, the member for Gippsland is warned. When I'm settling the House, it's not the time to interject. Give the call to the member for Banks.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Acting Prime Minister. How will the Albanese Labor government's historic investment in Medicare from the 1st of November deliver more bulk billing for Australians and assist with the cost of living? Why is this so important after a decade of cuts and neglect?
Call to the Acting Prime Minister.
Well, I thank the member for his question. On this Saturday, the 1st of November, Labor's bulk billing practice incentive program begins. This is an $8.5 billion commitment, which will lead to 9 out of 10 GP consults being bulk billed. Over the next 4 years, we will see around 4,800 GP clinics become bulk billing practices. That represents more than 30 in each of our electorates. And I can tell you that as of the beginning of this week, in my electorate, 13 practices, almost half the required number, have already expressed an interest before the program has started. Now, this will restore every dollar to Medicare that the Liberals cut. And we will never forget that in the first budget of the Abbott-Turnbull-Morrison government, they ripped $50 billion out of health. We'll never forget that under the Liberals, they froze the Medicare rebate for 6 years, sending bulk billing rates plummeting, and we will never forget that they tried to completely abolish bulk billing through the introduction of a GP tax, a tax that the Leader of the Opposition, when she was the Health Minister, completely supported, saying that its price signal was vital. And that is entirely consistent with her worldview, because last year she said that if you don't pay for something, you don't value it, and last week the Leader of the Opposition said that she was standing up against a culture of dependency. I mean, this is actually a really clear view. The Leader of the Opposition is obviously deeply uncomfortable with the idea of Australians going to the GP for free. The Liberals are now and have always been a material risk to Medicare. Well, this government has a very different view, because we believe that access to essential health care should be a basic right, and that's why we're doing even more. From the 1st of January, in just a couple of months, we're going to cap PBS scripts at just $25. They haven't been that low since 2004. And we will continue the rollout of our urgent care clinics. We did 87 in our first term. We'll do 50 in this term, meaning that Australians in need of non-life-threatening urgent care can get it hours quicker, much more conveniently and completely for free. Our government will defend public health, and we will advance public health very much in the interests of every Australian.
Call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. Earlier this year, the Treasurer went on a victory lap, declaring, quote, "Inflation is down substantially and in a sustained way." Yet today, inflation has shot up above all expectations, jumping to 3.2%. This means no relief for households, no relief when seeing the doctor, no rate cuts in sight, and families paying an additional $1,800 on their mortgage. With Australians suffering through the largest decline in living standards in the developed world, why is it when Labor fails, Australians always foot the bill?
Call to the Treasurer.
Well, Mr Speaker, if the opposition leader really cared about cost of living pressures, she wouldn't have just gone to an election promising to increase taxes on every single tax-paying Australian worker, Mr Speaker. If they cared about cost of living pressures, they wouldn't oppose our efforts to provide responsible cost of living relief, Mr Speaker. And I can hear the member for Hume chirping away over there, Mr Speaker. I'm pleased and relieved to learn that he's still here. But I remind him, Mr Speaker, that he's the one that took to the election a policy for higher taxes, bigger deficits and more debt. It was in his costings document, Mr Speaker. Now, when it comes to the inflation numbers today, these inflation numbers do reflect a situation that I've described on a number of occasions, acknowledged on a number of occasions, and I describe it this way, Mr Speaker. Even with the very substantial and very sustained progress that we've made together on inflation, even with the progress that we've made on real wages, even with the progress we've made in the economy more broadly, a lot of Australians are still under pressure. I've acknowledged that, and that's reflected in the numbers today, Mr Speaker, as well. In these numbers today, as the Deputy Prime Minister said a moment ago, inflation is higher than we'd like, but it is around half what we inherited from those opposite. And so if those opposite want to make this point about inflation at 3%, what do they say about inflation that they had running north of 6% and rising when we came to office? Inflation is half what we inherited from those opposite, Mr Speaker. And I hear again the member for Hume. I love it when he interjects, Mr Speaker, because it hasn't dawned on the member for Hume that when he left office, inflation was 6.1 and it was rising fast, Mr Speaker. They were spending more, they had bigger deficits and they had more debt, Mr Speaker. Now, the point that I would make about the numbers today, more specifically, Mr Speaker, is that the headline number increased largely as a result of the end of state energy rebates, but it is still much lower than its peak. The point that I would make about underlying inflation, both numbers are important, headline and underlying, but underlying inflation was at the top of the target band in the September quarter, and that means we've seen underlying inflation within the target band for multiple quarters, Mr Speaker. Remember, underlying inflation was closer to 5% when we came to office, and now it's around 3%, Mr Speaker. If those opposite were honest, they would acknowledge a couple of things. First of all, inflation's half what we inherited. Secondly, their policies would have made inflation worse, not better. We have made it clear that we want to make more progress on inflation. We've made it very clear that progress often isn't in a straight line, as we've seen around the world. We know that there's more work to do, and that's our focus.
Before I call the member for Braddon, the member for Hume interjected 9 times during that answer. Order. Members on my right, I don't need any commentary, so the member for Hume will not be interjecting, given he's used all his lives up. He won't be interjecting for the remainder of question time, and if he does, he won't be here. So, everyone understand that? Great. Okay, the member for Braddon has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. Why is it so important that the Albanese Labor government invest in bulk billing after a decade of cuts and neglect?
The call to the Minister for Health, Ageing and the Minister for the Disability and the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Thank you, Speaker. A big reason why the member for Braddon got the biggest swing of any member in this House was her relentless support for a stronger Medicare and cheaper medicines, Mr Speaker. And for her and for Labor, bulk billing is the beating heart of Medicare, Mr Speaker. The idea that all you need in this country to get great health care should be this little green and gold card, Mr Speaker, is central to our philosophy. And it was hard-fought, Mr Speaker. John Howard, the leader of the modern Liberal Party, said that bulk billing was an absolute rort. The AMA wanted to go on strike over bulk billing, Mr Speaker. But 30 years on, I think most of us thought the bulk billing was here to stay. 30 years on. Back in 2014, we didn't reckon on the Abbott government, of course, a government that tried to abolish bulk billing altogether in their first budget, Mr Speaker. And when we blocked that GP tax in the other place, Mr Speaker, the then Health Minister, Peter Dutton, tried another way instead and introduced a years-long freeze to the Medicare rebate, thinking that obviously if you freeze the income of doctors, that will pressure them to move away from bulk billing. Now, Peter Dutton didn't last long as Health Minister, Mr Speaker, but any sense that his replacement might have changed course was pretty quickly disappointed, Mr Speaker. And I think we remember who that replacement was. That's right. Leader of the Opposition, of course. The Leader of the Opposition. Now, as the new Health Minister, she could have changed direction, but instead, Mr Speaker, she doubled down. In her budget in 2016 as Health Minister, she didn't just lock in Peter Dutton's Medicare rebate freeze, she extended it for all of the rest of the decade, Mr Speaker. All of the rest of the decade, marking herself out as the only Health Minister in the history of Medicare never once to increase the Medicare rebate. Even Peter Dutton managed it once, not once under this Health Minister, marking herself out as the person probably most responsible for the situation we inherited when we came to government, a situation with bulk billing in freefall, Mr Speaker. Not the word I use, the word used by the College of GPs, Mr Speaker. Now, for those opposite who for decades fought against universal health care, who hate that little green and gold card, for those opposite, that's exactly what they always wanted, the idea of user-pays health care. For Labor, it was completely unacceptable. And that is why in the last 3 years we've delivered the 3 biggest increases to the Medicare rebate since Paul Keating was Prime Minister. That's why we tripled the bulk billing incentive for pensioners, concession card holders and children, Mr Speaker, and that's why on Saturday we will roll out the biggest investment in Medicare's history to fix the mess that the Leader of the Opposition created when she was the Health Minister.
Before I call the member for Mayo, I have a large number of guests to welcome to the parliament. Firstly, in the southern gallery behind the glass up today is students from Wentworth Falls Public School from the members for Macquarie's electorate. And in the southern gallery, we've got our friends, a group of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students from urban, rural and remote communities participating in the 2025 Work Exposure and Government program. And members from the Tasmanian Legislative Assembly, Josh Willey, and the member for Clark, Janie Finlay. And I see the former member for Higgins, Dr Katie Allen, in the gallery, Sam Dighton, the CEO of the Committee of Adelaide, and the Mayor, Jeff McDonald, and Deputy Mayor Rebecca Van Hoff from Toowoomba Regional Council. A group of young people from Western Australia representing 12 Buckets as part of their campaign to end child poverty, and the member for Pearce's electorate. And also a group of Young Assyrians, a youth-led organisation that aims to educate and empower young people in the Assyrian community, as guests of the member for Greenway and the member for McMahon. Welcome to everyone to Question Time. Now I give the call to the member for Mayo.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Aged Care and Seniors. Fred is a full pensioner with a Level 3 home care package. Today, his package covers his needs to stay home. Fred's been advised once support at home starts this Saturday, he will pay $21.87 out of pocket for each hour of cleaning, gardening and meal preparation. Fred can't afford this and says he'll be forced to cancel his care package. Can the Minister explain how Fred, not being able to afford home care, is putting the care into aged care?
Call to the Minister for Aged Care and the Minister for Seniors.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for her question, and I acknowledge her genuine interest in ensuring that every older person in her community can access safe, dignified and high-quality aged care services. I'm not familiar with the particular circumstances of Fred, but we'll be happy to take advice after question time from the member and follow up on his personal circumstances. However, I can provide some more general information to the member and to the House about co-contributions and means testing, to which the member's question pertains. The Albanese Labor government's once-in-a-generation aged care reforms are focused on ensuring that we have an equitable and sustainable aged care system that delivers the care that every older person across our country needs and deserves. The new funding model is designed to make our aged care system more sustainable and to encourage investment in new facilities. These are both important parts of our plan to support the growing needs of an ageing population. In the next 40 years, the number of Australians aged over 65 is expected to more than double, while those 85 or older will more than triple. We worked closely with those opposite to seek a bipartisan approach to aged care sector sustainability. The new Aged Care Act, which starts this weekend, legislates a new funding model which was developed in response to expert advice from the Aged Care Task Force. Under the new model, people who can contribute to their care will, while people who are less well off will receive extra support. These changes are about ensuring that the government can afford to continue as the primary funder of the aged care system. Importantly, the government will continue to cover the full cost of clinical care for all residential and in-home care. A key feature of Support at Home is the services list, which outlines services that can be accessed under the program. And the department engaged with a range of aged care stakeholders to test and refine the Support at Home service list to ensure it recognises the needs of older people in the context of the broader universal health system, including Medicare. Now, there are protections in place so that people aren't worse off. A person who is in residential aged care when the new laws come in will remain under the current means testing arrangements unless they choose to opt into the new system. And with Support at Home, the in-home care program, the no worse off principle applies. So anyone who was in the system before 12th of September 2024 will have their contributions grandfathered. Older people having difficulty paying their co-contributions will be able to apply for very substantial hardship assistance through Services Australia, and a lifetime contribution cap will apply for everybody. Mr Speaker, our goal is to make sure that every older person across Australia can access the safe, dignified and high-quality care that they need and deserve.
Give the call to the member for Chisholm.
Thank you so much, Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. What does the latest data tell us about the progress we have made together on the economy, and how does that compare to other approaches?
The member for Goldstein, interjecting on, I think I made this pretty clear yesterday, interjecting during a question is highly disorderly. You'll leave the chamber under 94A. The same rules will apply all the time, every day. It's not going to change. So don't interject on a question and you can stay. If you interject on a question, you won't be here. One more time. All right, the Treasurer has the call.
Thank you, Speaker, and thanks to the wonderful member for Chisholm for her question, but also for the way that she represents her community here in this place, in the parliament, Mr Speaker. As I said a moment ago, Mr Speaker, when it comes to the inflation data that we received a short time ago, we acknowledge that even with the very substantial and sustained progress that we've made in the fight against inflation and on real wages, and with interest rates coming down 3 times this year, we know that a lot of Australians are still under pressure, and this is borne out in the figures today, Mr Speaker. But it's also true that since we came to office, inflation has halved, and that reflects our efforts to do as much as we responsibly can to help with the cost of living, to get the budget in much better condition than we inherited from those opposite. Now, we've made good progress when it comes to a number of the most important indicators in our economy, but we do acknowledge that people are still under pressure, and we see that in the numbers today, Mr Speaker. Now, it's not uncommon around the world to see this progress on inflation, for that progress not to be in a straight line. We've seen inflation go up in every major advanced economy in their most recent data, except for the UK, where it's much higher than it is here already, Mr Speaker. And so that's an important factor as well, Mr Speaker. Now, when it comes to the points that those opposite have made through the course of this question time, we know that they're divided, we know that they're divisive, we know they're in disarray, but they are also dishonest when it comes to inflation, Mr Speaker. Because if they were honest about inflation, they would admit inflation was 6.1% and rising when we came to office. It's now half that. If they were honest, they'd admit that interest rates were already coming up when we came to office. Under us, they've fallen 3 times this year. If they were honest, that they would admit that unemployment averaged 5.6% under them, 3.9% under us. If they were honest, they'd admit that wages growth was 2.2% under them, 3.7% under us. If they were honest, they'd admit real wages were going backwards 3.4% when we came to office. They're now growing at their strongest rate in 5 years. And when it comes to the question the Leader of the Opposition asked a moment ago, Mr Speaker, if she was honest, she would admit that living standards went backwards 1.9% in the quarter that we came to office. They're now growing 2.4% through the year to June 2025, the strongest annual growth in almost 4 years, Mr Speaker. So the point I'm making is this. There are no shortage of challenges in our economy. That's why we're rolling out responsible cost of living relief and strengthening Medicare to help where we responsibly can the Australians who are still facing cost of living pressure. Under those opposite, things were much worse, and if they'd won their last election, things would have been much worse still.
Give a call to the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question goes to the Treasurer. Yesterday, the Governor of the Reserve Bank said a 0.9% increase in core inflation would be, I quote, a material miss. Today, it came in even higher. Given the Treasurer always takes credit for when inflation falls, will he now take responsibility for today's news of inflation increasing?
Give a call to the Treasurer.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Actually, I share credit when inflation comes down, as I have on many occasions from this dispatch box. I make the point that government is playing a helpful and meaningful role in our economic progress but that the credit belongs to the Australian people who work hard and provide for their loved ones and do the best they can, Mr Speaker. So if he's going to get a very rare question, Mr Speaker, he may as well get it right and quote me accurately. I always share credit when things go well in our economy. And I take responsibility. I take responsibility for working through the challenges as they present themselves in our economy, Mr Speaker. I take responsibility for the fact that this cabinet and this government has cleaned up much of the mess that those opposite left us in the budget. I take responsibility for the fact that we worked together with the Australian people to deliver 2 surpluses when those opposite couldn't deliver a single one in 9 years. I take responsibility for the fact that we've got real wages growing again after a decade of deliberate wage suppression and wage stagnation. We take responsibility for the fact that living standards are recovering after they were falling sharply under those opposite, Mr Speaker. We take responsibility to work through the challenges in our economy, whether those challenges are inflation or business investment or more work that we need to do when it comes to the sustainability of the budget, Mr Speaker. Now, if the Shadow Treasurer wants to ask me about the comments of the Reserve Bank Governor, then the Shadow Treasurer should acknowledge that this is what the Reserve Bank Governor has said. We have got relatively low debt compared to the other countries, relatively low debt to GDP ratios. We've had a couple of surpluses, and the most recent deficit, in fact, is quite small as well, Mr Speaker. And the last time that the Reserve Bank looked at their forecast for public demand, which is government spending largely, they revised down their forecasts in the near term. So if the Shadow Treasurer is going to get a rare outing at the dispatch box, he should quote the Reserve Bank Governor the right way. He should quote me the right way. We've made a lot of progress in our economy, Mr Speaker, but we know the job is not done. We had a hell of a mess to clean up when we came to office. We've made progress on inflation. We've made progress in the budget. We've made progress on real wages. We've made progress on the gender gap. We're rolling out cost of living help in the most responsible way that we can. Those opposite have opposed most of that cost of living help. If they had their way and won their last election, Australians would be under more pressure, not less.
The call to the honourable member for Brisbane.
My question is to the Minister for Small Business. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering for Australia's small businesses, and why is this so important?
Call to the Minister for International Development, the Minister for Small Business and the Minister for Multicultural Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and thank you so much also to the member for Brisbane, a passionate supporter of small businesses in her electorate, and like many of us on this side is out there listening to small businesses in their communities, heeding their comments and coming back in here and advocating so passionately and so strongly for them. And the member knows, as we all do in the Albanese government, that small businesses are at the heart of our communities. And with 2.6 million small businesses employing more than 5 million Australians and contributing almost $600 billion to our nation's economy every year, small business is big business. They are the corner cafes that bring us together, the tradies who build our homes, the start-ups that turn dreams and passions into livelihoods. And when they thrive, Australia thrives. That's what guides our national small business strategy, the first of its kind, with a focus on helping small business grow, on tackling red tape and on creating an even playing field. Now, Mr Speaker, over the past few weeks I've had the pleasure of visiting business communities from Burwood in Reid to North Beach in Moore, from Sunnybank in Moreton to Box Hill in Menzies. And I've spoken with small business owners, listened to their stories and heard firsthand some of the challenges that they face. In the last sitting period in this House and on this side of the chamber, we reaffirmed our focus on delivering real outcomes for small businesses right across Australia by passing legislation that extends the $20,000 instant asset write-off so that small businesses with an annual turnover of less than $10 million can continue to immediately deduct eligible assets. Now, I know that this measure will make a real difference to small businesses in Australia, including the 1.5 million small businesses that are sole traders and who also have benefited from the Albanese Labor government's tax cuts. For small business owners like Philip, now Philip runs Oatly Chinese Malaysian restaurant in the member for Banks's electorate. Yeah. And the instant asset write-off is going to help Philip manage his cash flow to invest in new kitchen equipment, expand his operations and continue serving his local community. Because we understand that every piece of equipment bought, every tool replaced, every shop front opened represents something bigger. It represents confidence and a chance to build a better future. So, whether it's extending the instant asset write-off or targeted energy bill relief or improved payment times, digital supports or giving small business a fair go in government procurement, the Albanese Labor government backs in small business, just as small business backs in Australia.
Yeah. Before I call the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, I'm pleased to inform the House that we've just been joined by a delegation from the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Parliament of the Republic of Estonia, led by Committee's Chairman Mr Marko Mikkelsen. Accompanied by a delegation is His Excellency Mr Jan Reinhold, Ambassador to Estonia to Australia. Welcome to you all. Call to the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question goes to the Treasurer, and it follows his answer to my previous question, where he showered himself with compliments but failed to take responsibility for today's shocking inflation figures. Given government spending is running 4 times faster than the economy, with the highest level of spending outside of recession in nearly 40 years, keeping interest rates higher for longer, will the Treasurer now concede it is time to stop Labor's spending spree?
You call to the Treasurer.
Mr Speaker, you can't believe a word he says. I mean, the way that he's characterised, the way that he just characterised my earlier answer has no relationship with reality, Mr Speaker. But leaving that aside for one moment, I think the Shadow Treasurer once again has impeccable timing, asking me about government spending and the budget position in the week that Fitch Ratings Agency has reaffirmed Australia's AAA credit rating. Right. And the reason they've done that is because our budget position is one of the strongest in the G20. Yeah. And that's because, unlike those opposite in ways unrecognisable to them in government, we've banked most of the upward revisions to revenue. We've found $100 billion in savings. We delivered 2 surpluses in our first 2 years when those opposite couldn't deliver a single one in 9 years. We've got the deficit down to about 1/5 of what we inherited from those opposite. We've got debt down by $188 billion since we came to office, and that's saving the Australian people $60 billion in interest, Mr Speaker. Now, can I remind the Shadow Treasurer that when he asks about government spending, when we came to office, spending was about 1/3 of the economy, and we got it down to about 1/4 of the economy. They had real spending growth averaging 4.1. We've got it averaging 1.7. They had gross debt peaking at 45% of the economy. We've got it down to 37% of the economy, Mr Speaker. But I think the most important thing for those watching at home to understand about the Shadow Treasurer's answer is when he talks about the difference in spending in recent years, one of the things that he's most critical of is the fact that we have seen very substantial indexation of government payments, including the age pension. And so if the Shadow Treasurer thinks that indexing the age pension is wasteful spending, then he should say so. That's right. He should say so. And it reminds me, Mr Speaker, as well, that when it comes to the opposition leader's comments, in the week where we are investing massive amounts of money to improve bulk billing in our communities, the opposition leader has said that she doesn't support universal entitlements. The most important universal entitlement in our society and our communities is Medicare, and the opposition leader doesn't support it. She makes that clear. So, Mr Speaker, when those opposite talk about spending restraint, what they mean is coming after pensions again, like they did in 2014. They mean come after Medicare again like they did in 2014. The opposition leader even plagiarised Joe Hockey's lifters and leaners speech, which didn't go real well for him before the 2014 budget. We'll continue to manage the budget responsibly. Interest rates have come down 3 times this year already. Inflation's half what we inherited. We'll stack up our record against yours any day.
Give the call to the honourable member for Cunningham.
How is the Albanese government and the Australian Federal Police helping to keep Australian children safe?
Call to the Leader of the House.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Cunningham for raising an important and tough issue. Today at the National Press Club, Australian Federal Police Commissioner Chrissy Barrett announced the formation of Task Force Pompolid. The purpose of this task force is to deal with a form of exploitation and sadism that we all wish we didn't have to be aware of. This is effectively because of an online network where the perpetrators are principally young boys and young men from Western English-speaking backgrounds, and the victims are overwhelmingly young girls who've had a history of low self-esteem, mental health disorders, histories of self-harm, eating disorders and other attributes that might lead them to seek connection online. The method has been that victims are pressured initially into providing compromising or sensitive information or images. Once the images have been provided, they are then blackmailed into escalating acts of violence targeted at themselves, at their siblings, sometimes at strangers, sometimes at pets. In establishing the task force, the Federal Police are bringing together officers from their cyber, counter-terrorism, from their intelligence division and also from the Australian Centre for Countering Child Exploitation. And I do want to pay tribute to the officers who work in that particular division in Brisbane, and in particular pay tribute to Peter Dutton as a former Minister for Home Affairs in seeing that established. Legislation which passed this parliament, passed the other place this morning, the new telecommunications bill, gives new powers that the AFP and other agencies will be able to use to be able to infiltrate and destroy some of these child exploitation networks. In terms of the scale, when you consider that we have largely not spoken about this to date, since July of 2023 the Federal Police has received just over 100 reports of sadistic online exploitation. These reports have been received, some from our international law enforcement partners, some from the United States Centre and some from members of the public. It's resulted in 9 international and 3 domestic arrests. While the Australian Federal Police are doing their work with the task force, parents and children will often ask, what can they do? The 4 pieces of advice from the Australian Federal Police are these: stop the chat, take screenshots, especially of the offender's username, report and block the account, screenshot your own account information as well. And of course all this information and the capacity to report is at the Australian Centre to Counter Child Exploitation's website, accce.gov.au. The best thing that anyone can do, no matter whether they're involved or they know a friend who is to tell someone about it. Tell someone it is not your fault. While the Commissioner mentioned today that it has always taken a village to raise a child, sometimes it takes a country to protect them. And those people who are feeling threatened or exploited by these networks need to know that the Federal Police are there with them, protecting them. The government is there, the entire parliament is there, and the Australian people stand together with the work of the Australian Federal Police.
On indulgence, the Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, can I associate the opposition with those remarks and say how much we appreciate the work of those in the agencies you mentioned, Minister, in Task Force Argus, and indeed in every police station across this country that has to deal with hideous and heinous acts against children. Can I also express my very deep concern at the explosion of internet child sexual abuse in this country? In the time that I have been in the parliament, I have been overwhelmed. Law enforcement has been overwhelmed. We want to work constructively and very positively to do whatever we can to stamp this out.
Call to the honourable member for Lyne.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Industry and Innovation. Yesterday, the Minister for Industry said he would exhaust every opportunity to save Tomago. Minister, James Strong a local manufacturing business in my electorate, has seen their energy bills rise by over 70% over the past 4 years, an increase of around $800,000. Why won't the Albanese Labor government exhaust every opportunity to listen to Aussie manufacturers like James Strong and scrap their failed energy policies?
Call to the Minister for Defence Industry, the Minister for Pacific Island Affairs and the Minister representing the Minister for Industry and Innovation.
I thank the member for her question, and we are absolutely committed to listening and acting for Australian manufacturers. Every day we get up and fight to support manufacturers, and that's what we're doing right now, fighting to keep Tomago open. Unlike those opposite, we don't cheer when manufacturers go overseas. We don't say you shouldn't be despondent when an aluminium smelter closes down, like the Liberal Party did in 2014. We're fighting very hard to support manufacturers every day, and that includes driving strong energy policies. Unlike those opposite, who had 23 failed energy policies, we're intent on speeding up the rollout of the cheapest form of new power, which is renewable energy, backed up by peaking gas, backed up by batteries, backed up by pumped hydro. And I'll note the statements from Tomago's owner, Rio Tinto, that it was the lack of availability of renewable energy that was driving some of their decisions. That stands in stark contrast to the experience of the Bowen Island smelter that has secured, through their own actions and the actions of the Commonwealth Government and state governments of both persuasions, power purchasing agreements that cover 80% of their power, and that's coming from renewable energy, which is locking in their future. Tomago was unable to secure that so far, and that's why we're working really hard with them to find solutions. But let's be frank about this. We're dealing with this because of 10 years of inaction from those opposite. 10 years of inaction. And don't take my word for it. Take the word from Rio's CEO, who said in 2019, and I quote,
the member for Lyne will
Australia lacks internationally competitive energy prices which undermine the viability of these assets. That's what they said in 2019 when they were experiencing 23 failed energy policies of those opposite. We're getting on with a job. We're fighting hard to get energy prices down, unlike those who cheer when manufacturers go overseas, who had 23 policies around energy, who are intent on fighting climate wars instead of getting on the job of supporting manufacturers. I'll never be lectured on support from manufacturers from the party of Joe Hockey, from the party who cheered when Toyota left, who cheered when General Motors left. We will fight for manufacturers every single day.
Order. The member for Wannon on a point of order.
It just goes to relevant, Speaker. He wasn't asked about the opposition. He was asked about what you're doing to save those jobs.
Has the minister completed his answer? Has the minister completed his answer? Okay. Order. Order. Just the member for Cowper will just cease and desist. Okay. When the House comes to order, we'll hear from the honourable member for Blair.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations. How is the Albanese government ensuring working Australians are paid what they're entitled to, including superannuation?
Call to the Minister for Employment and the Minister for Workplace Relations.
Well, thank you, Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for Blair for that question and for his advocacy for working people in his community. Of course, the Albanese Labor government has delivered significant improvements to our workplace laws to protect the entitlements of working Aussies, including their superannuation entitlements. We've already delivered important laws that protect Australian workers' pay by criminalising intentional wage theft. As part of our commitment to protect workers' entitlements, we've amended the Fair Work Act to make superannuation a clear workplace right. Our amendment means that workers can pursue unpaid wages and unpaid super at the same time, making it easier for workers to get what they are owed. Now, for too long, workers have had to undergo separate processes to get their entitlements, and we have fixed that. Now, recognising superannuation has a critical role in supporting workers in retirement is what our government has done. We are now paying superannuation on government-paid parental leave. And of course, on the 1st of July, our government has increased the superannuation guarantee to 12%. This improves the economic security of thousands of families in Australia. And of course, we are continuing to safeguard entitlements of Aussie workers through our payday super legislation, ensuring that their super is paid at the same time as their wages. Now, our payday super changes will ensure that super is paid earlier and more regularly into super accounts, giving people better oversight and bigger balances at retirement. Too many workers are not paid their superannuation that they're owed. We know that unpaid superannuation has a profound impact on workers' retirement savings. In fact, the most recent financial year data shows that almost $5.2 billion in unpaid super that is out there that should have gone to workers. And of course, by having better oversight, which our legislation will do, will ensure workers can check that they're getting paid the entitlements that they are owed. But payday super also means that workers are retiring with more because deposits are being made in a timely manner and more frequently. What this will mean for an average 25-year-old's retirement balance is an extra $6,000 in today's dollars. This is a real boost to their retirement savings. It is Labor that created superannuation. We believe in it, and that's why we will always strengthen the system to make sure it's equitable, sustainable and delivers to Australian workers.
Give the call to the honourable member for Fowler.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Education. Before the election, the Albanese government promised a Western Sydney University campus at Fairfield Connect. Can the Minister confirm what courses and degrees are actually being offered there for the southwest residents of that area, including my electorate of Fowler? And can the Minister confirm that there are no plans to cut funding or close the campus at any time? Thank you.
Give the call to the Minister for Education.
Well, thanks very much, Mr Speaker, and can I thank the member for Fowler for her question. That university study hub at Fairfield is very important because what it does is it brings university closer to where people in our community live and make it easier for people to go to university and get an education. And when that hub expands in a couple of weeks' time, it will mean that you'll be able to study for almost any degree at almost any university across the country. It's one of about 69 university study hubs that are either established now or will be established over the next few months across the country. We've doubled the number, or doubling the number in the bush and in the regions, but for the first time ever establishing these hubs in the outer suburbs of our big cities. Fairfield is an example of that, but one will be established in Liverpool in your electorate in the first week of December as well. And we do that for a reason, because, as you know, as many members know, I grew up in your electorate, one of the best parts of the country, went to school there, went to high school there. I'm the first person in my family to finish high school, to finish Year 10. A lot of people that I went to school with, I'm sure the same is true for you. I know the same is true for my friend Chris Bowen, who's over here as well. Is that for a lot of people that we grew up with, university seemed like it was somewhere else, for someone else, and this invisible barrier that stopped a lot of people from going to university. We've got to break down that barrier, and this is all about doing that, making sure that more people can go to university, or if they're going to university in the city, that they can study closer to home. And so that's what that is about. I'm very, very proud that we're doing that. But not just that. The reforms that I'll implement into the parliament next year are about making sure that we provide more funding for more people from communities like ours to get to university and to succeed when they get there. That involves investing in a demand-driven system for young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. Because the truth is that even though this country has changed in remarkable ways, to the point where over my own lifetime the number of people with a university degree has changed from barely 2% to now almost 1 in 2 young people in their 20s and 30s with a university degree. It's not true where I grew up, and it's not true in many of the communities in Western Sydney, and I want to change that. And that's what the reforms that I'll introduce next year are about, a demand-driven system to provide more support for more people from our communities to go to university, and needs-based funding to support them while they're at university to get the degree, to transform their lives, because a good education changes the lives of people in our community, and a good education system will change this nation.
Call to the honourable member for Whitlam.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Aged Care and Seniors. With the new Aged Care Act coming into effect this Saturday, how is the Albanese Labor government supporting older Australians and the sector to prepare for these historic reforms? Why are these reforms necessary?
Give the call to the Minister for Aged Care and Seniors.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for Whitlam for her question, and I acknowledge her profound contribution to our care economy before she joined this parliament. And I had a great time with her and the member for Cunningham when we visited older people in the Illawarra recently. In just a few short days, Australia will take a once-in-a-generation step forward in our care of older people. On Saturday, the Albanese Labor government's new Aged Care Act comes into effect, delivering safer, fairer care for hundreds of thousands of older Australians. Now, we came to government determined to fix a system that had been left to crumble, a system the Royal Commission found unacceptable and unsustainable, and said of those opposite, and I quote, "Their main consideration was the minimum commitment they could get away with." On Saturday, we'll deliver the next step in the transformative change Australians have been waiting for. This is a reform built carefully, designed alongside those it serves, older people and their families, workers, providers and experts. Planned, tested and communicated so that older people don't have their care interrupted. From support at home to strengthened residential standards, our changes will make sure that older Australians can get the right care in the right place at the right time, helping them live their later years with the dignity and the joy that they deserve. It means more people can stay in their homes for longer, with the support, equipment and modifications that they need to live independently. And it means safer residential care with stronger standards, clearer obligations and more accountability. Mr Speaker, every older person on a home care package has been written to directly. Providers have had months of support and guidance about the changes coming this weekend. We've held webinars, town halls and workshops across the country to make sure that people have the information they need, and we're continuing that outreach every single day. Mr Speaker, we're ready to deliver this reform, but it's not the end of the journey. There's more to do. We'll make sure we're keeping pace with demand so that older Australians can get the care they need for generations to come. We'll be ambitious about supporting people who need more intensive care than traditional aged care can provide. And we'll keep working with the sector to get the settings right, for older people, for workers and for a sustainable system into the future. Mr Speaker, we are on the eve of generational reform. On Saturday, Australia will have a better aged care system, one built on safety, on dignity and respect, and designed to meet the needs of generations to come.
Give the call to the member for Gippsland.
Thank you, Speaker. To the Minister for Veterans Affairs. The New South Wales RSL has given evidence to the Senate inquiry into Labor's Defence Honours Bill, saying it is disgraceful, and I quote, "This bill will be completely detrimental to not only their physical health and mental health, it will also devalue their service." Minister, you know this bill strips away rights from veterans and ADF personnel who have delivered the freedoms we enjoy in our nation today. Will the government finally admit it has made a mistake and just bin this disgraceful bill?
Call to the Minister for Veterans Affairs and the Minister for Defence Personnel.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank the member for his question because it provides me with a great opportunity to provide him and the House with some clarifications on the matters that he has raised. And I I'm grateful for that opportunity because I've seen over the course of the last few days his blood pressure really rise, his anxiety level really rise, which might be of concern for members of our House about the member for Gippsland. But what I'm more concerned with, Mr Speaker, is the way in which he has conducted his opposition.
The Minister doesn't work that way. Member for Gippsland has asked a question. The Minister's answering. We've got to respect each other here. So no more interjections from Member for Gippsland. I can hear you, trust me, and I'll give the call to the Minister now to answer and return to the question.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. What's concerned me is the way in which the member for Gippsland has engaged in debate on this bill, creating anxiety and uncertainty and unclarity across the veteran community in respect to what this legislation is about. What I've encountered as a Minister for Veterans Affairs is concerns that have been raised by the Defence Honours and Awards Tribunal about the difficulty that it has confronted over many years, over different chairpersons of that tribunal, of dealing with long historical cases in front of it and making sure that it is able to remain relevant in the work that it does to ensure that our veterans and our serving personnel can have decisions made by Defence properly reviewed. And I think people understand, and I know in my engagement with the veteran community around this bill and around many issues surrounding medals, that they want to ensure that those decisions can be properly based in evidence, which is why we have many reviews of these matters, that they can be properly based in evidence, and that we see the integrity in the way in which that system operates. And that's what these amendments are designed to achieve. What is particularly troubling, though, is the way in which the member opposite, the Shadow Minister for Veterans Affairs, who, given he is a former Minister for Veterans Affairs and Defence personnel, should know better, is the way in which he has tried to suggest that these amendments would remove the capacity to be able to award honours to serving persons.
The member for Wannan's pushing it here. The Minister was asked a direct question about the legislation. He's talking about the legislation. He's talking about the criticism of the legislation. It's going to be very difficult. I think everyone here has heard what the Minister is saying for you to raise a point of order on relevance. So we just can't have people jumping up and taking points because you don't like the answer.
Was
the member for Wannon on a point of order.
Relevance. The question was about the comments by the New South Wales RSL.
No, the member for Wannon, you've got to stop doing this. The question was about evidence given to the Senate committee about the bill. So the minister's talking about the bill. Listen carefully. He's talking about the bill. He's talking about the components of the bill. I'm making notes about what he's saying. So that's an abuse of the standing orders, and you continually do it. If he was talking about another bill, if he was talking about another piece of legislation, well, he wouldn't be relevant. But when you're talking about the question that you're asked, the standing orders are written in such a way, I don't want this to continue. So that's the last time you're going to take a frivolous point of order. So the minister is being absolutely relevant, and I want to make sure he's continued not about the opposition, about the bill. The minister has the call.
One of the concerns that's been raised about the bill, Mr Speaker, has been to suggest that people who have been awarded honours previously, with the changes that we have made, would not have been able to be awarded those honours. And the person so often cited has been Teddy Sheehan. And the thing that needs to be remembered, especially by those opposite, Teddy Sheehan was a very deserved awardee of the Victoria Cross for Australia. When the Tribunal recommended that decision, the government opposite didn't follow that recommendation. They didn't follow that recommendation. They had a whole separate process to deal with that because of the pressure on this side of the House, because of the pressure from the veteran community. It is that sort of disinformation that is causing anxiety in the veteran community, and as former minister, the member opposite should know better.
Call to the member for Macon.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering a modern, reliable energy grid in the national interest? What policies have been proposed that are not in the national interest?
We call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for his question. He was a champion power lifter and is a champion MP, Mr Speaker. And his community are champion battery installers because of the 150 electorates in Australia. The electorate of Macon comes in well in the top 10 in 7th place for the number of cheaper home batteries installed since the 1st of July, and they are big participants in the 103,494 batteries that have been installed since the 1st of July. So this is a great addition. I know the Leader of the Opposition doesn't support the policy as she interjects, but the Australian people do, Mr Speaker, as they're showing by their actions. It is part of a broader suite, and we saw the AEMO connection figures overnight showing 23.2 gigawatts of early-stage projects finalising contracts or under construction, up 43% on the same time last year. And just today we saw the Minister for the Environment improve a new big battery in Chinchilla in the member for Maranoa's electorate, which will power 101,000 houses for 4 hours. 101,000 houses for 4 hours. Facts matter. Facts matter. I'm sure the Leader of the National Party joins us in welcoming this big step forward. And the member asked me what policies are being proposed that are not in the national interest, because obviously all the policies I just ran through are in the national interest. And of course, on the opposition, we see the right hand not knowing what the further right hand is doing as they battle to try and get further and further away from mainstream Australia, whether it's nuclear or net zero. We saw the opposition go to the last election with a nuclear policy, and in the wash-up of that election defeat, we saw the blame game started. We saw Jacob Grieber report, Littleproud, this is about the nuclear policy, Littleproud reportedly told party insiders it was a way to give us something to talk about on Sky, where late-night hosts were whipping up a long campaign against Labor's renewable focus. Well, there you have it. There's their priorities. We're about storing renewable energy for after dark. They're about appeasing Sky after dark, Mr Speaker. We're about building policies to build the nation. They're about policies to beat one nation. We're about expert reports. They're about the Bull report. We care about credibility. They care about equivalent. This is the difference, Mr Speaker, between our approach and their approach. This is why mainstream Australia sees them increasingly out of touch with the challenges and opportunities of our economy, why they weren't trusted in May and why they're not trusted now, because they have spent the time since the election showing that they are even more out of touch now than they were in May.
I'll give the call to the member for Keogh.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is for the Treasurer. Treasurer, late last year your department published a review of the Medical Research Future Fund, but it was only released at the end of last month. In that report, the department canvassed options for the MRFF, including its abolition. Will the Treasurer reassure Australia's medical researchers that the government will not abolish the MRFF or use its funds for any purpose other than disbursing MRFF earnings for MRFF research grants?
Call to the Treasurer.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Speaker. I can give that commitment. We won't be abolishing the fund. We think the fund serves a very important purpose in our when it comes to health research, and so I'm happy to give that assurance. In fact, Mr Speaker, in all of the discussions that we've had about this fund in the time that you have been raising it in good faith and from a good place and based on all of your experience, all of the conversations that I've been having with the Minister for Health about this are about strengthening the role of the fund and making sure that it's serving the purpose for which it is intended. And so I provide the member with that assurance. And the reason we're big believers in the fund is because we know how important medical research is. We are a nation of innovators. We know that that innovation can help when it comes to some of our most persistent health challenges. And I'm proud, I'm sure the government is proud, the Cabinet is proud that in our 24-25 budget we had that $6.5 billion 10-year investment plan supported by the Medical Research Future Fund. And I want to pay tribute here to the Minister for Health and his colleagues in the health team for the work that he does in making sure that the fund is doing the job for which it is intended. When the honourable member asked the Minister for Health a similar question, He pointed out that we're now funding more than $1.5 billion of health and medical research every year, not just through the MRFF but also the endowment account from the NHMRC as well. That includes projects like clinical trials to help patients access cutting-edge medical interventions and build our evidence base, investing in research missions, including better treating brain cancer, cardiovascular health, reducing health inequities, and also training the next generation of clinical researchers, Mr Speaker. We've taken a consistent approach, a reliable approach to drawing down from the fund, providing that $650 million a year as part of the 10-year investment plan. In years where the maximum disbursement recommended by the Future Fund has been lower than the $650 million, we've provided additional funding through the budget process. I think from memory, or I'm told that in 2022-23 we topped it up. When the recommendation was $598, we provided an extra $52 million. As the Minister also indicated when the honourable member asked him most recently, we will consider findings from the review of the MRFF as part of the broader work on our National Health and Medical Research Strategy. We will look forward to engaging further with the member about what comes next. But I finish where I started, Mr Speaker. These research funds are really important. We believe in them, the important role that health and medical research plays in our community, in our economy, and most particularly when it comes to the health of Australians. And the position that we take following that review will reflect that.
Treasurer Chalmers concluded. The call to the member for Tangney.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Veteran Affairs. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering for Australians' veterans and their families?
Give the call to the
and are there any risk to their support? Thank you.
Give the call to the Minister for Veterans Affairs and the Minister for Defence Personnel.
Well, thank you, Speaker, and I thank the terrific member for Tangney for his important question, and I acknowledge the service of his son in our Australian Defence Force as well. The Albanese government's commitment to delivering for veterans and families has been seen across our term of government, but even all the way back to opposition. We saw the rates of defence and veteran suicide, and we called on the previous government to hold a royal commission. We saw the backlog of some 42,000 veteran claims sitting in the Department of Veterans Affairs, not even being looked at under the previous government, and we committed to 500 additional staff for DVA, and we delivered that in government. We received the interim report then of the Royal Commission only months after coming into government in 2022, and we delivered a response from government in September of 2022. We took action on all of the recommendations in that report. We delivered proper resourcing to the Department of Veterans Affairs, making it the best funded it has been in 3 decades. We cleared the backlog of claims early so veterans and families could get access to the services and supports that they deserve and that they need. We oversaw an increase in funding going to veteran services and compensation of some $15 billion. Meanwhile, the opposition wanted to cut the extra staff that we had added to support our veterans. We passed the Vets Act, simplifying and harmonising 3 complex pieces of legislation supporting our veterans to create one simpler scheme. That was the biggest change to veterans legislation in a century. We received the final report of the Royal Commission in September of 2024. And we delivered the government response in December of 2024, one of the fastest government responses to a Royal Commission ever, because we take these issues seriously. Within a year of the Royal Commission, we have implemented what it said was its most important recommendation, establishing a legislated oversight body, the Defence and Veterans Service Commission. We've implemented 8 other recommendations as well already, and work is underway on a further 110 of the recommendations. We're also rolling out Veterans and Families Hubs across the country and delivering the Veterans Employment Program. We have also doing the work to make it easier for veterans and families to be able to lodge claims with DVA, and we've delivered the first combined defence and veteran mental health and wellbeing strategy. Meanwhile, the only commitment that's coming out of the opposition leader and her shadow treasurer is cutting back government expenditure, something that would go to the heart of the support that is delivered to our veterans. Unlike the fluff and cluck from those opposite with their fear and misinformation, the Albanese government is actually delivering for veterans and families.
Give a call to the honourable member for Gippsland. The member for Herbert will leave the chamber. Completely disrespectful. The member for Gippsland will start his question.
Thank you, Speaker. To the Minister for Veterans Affairs, can the minister name a single veteran who supports the Labor Party's changes to the Defence Honours and Awards Appeals Tribunal?
Call to the Minister for Veterans Affairs, the Minister for Defence Personnel. Order.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank the member for his question. In the process of developing these reforms, I engaged with all of the members of the ex-service organisation roundtable. We also put these reforms forward at a previous Senate inquiry before the last election. I have engaged with many ex-service organisations around these issues. I'm not going to go into chapter and verse of every individual conversation I have just to satisfy your ego. If you don't want to engage collaboratively with the government around these important reforms—
Order. Has the minister concluded his answer? Has the minister concluded his answer? Well, I'll take that as no. The manager on a point of order.
And Mr. Speaker, to take his point of order, but I noticed the Leader of the House was about to jump with his policing of the you and your, his long-term ode to all of us. The minister has used several you and yours in his response, and I know the Leader of the House has a very significant concern about that language.
It would assist the House greatly if the minister would follow the standing orders and direct all comments through the chair. The manager is correct.
And I thank the member for raising it. As I said before, I've had lengthy engagement in respect of this bill that will make sure that we have a tribunal that is modern, that is able to look after the concerns of our veterans, and to make sure that the tribunal is able to consider relevant evidence that is easily available to it. That's why we have these reforms. There is a committee considering these reforms right now in the Senate, and I look forward to engaging with the opposition and all members on how we can deliver important reform to modernise the work of the tribunal. And thank you.
Order. When the House comes to order, we'll hear from the member for Macarthur.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. After a decade of cuts and neglect, how will Australian doctors and patients be better off thanks to the Albanese Labor government's investment in Medicare?
Call to the Minister for Health and Ageing, the Minister for Disability and the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, the member for Macarthur opened his medical practice on the 1st of February 1984, the day that Medicare started. He has truly lived and breathed Medicare, Mr. Speaker, and relentlessly urged us to do everything we can to clean up the mess that was left by those opposite. He knows the biggest mess was the situation around bulk billing, Mr. Speaker, and we are turning that around. By changing the indexation of Medicare rebates formula, we've delivered the biggest increases to the Medicare rebate since Paul Keating was the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker. By tripling the bulk billing incentive for Australia's pensioners, concession card holders and kids, we've delivered millions of additional free visits to the doctor and turned bulk billing around for those Australians, getting it back up to 92%, Mr. Speaker. But the member knows that for those Australians who don't have a concession card, the bulk billing rate has been continuing to slide. And that is why this Saturday, Mr. Speaker, we will roll out the biggest investment in the history of Medicare to turn that around, to extend bulk billing incentives for the first time ever to every single Australian, to extend an incentive payment, an additional payment to general practices and their doctors if they choose to bulk bill every patient all of the time, Mr Speaker. Now, that's obviously going to be great for patients, Mr Speaker, but it's also going to be good for doctors. 2 years ago, a full-time, fully bulk billing GP in our cities would have been earning about $280,000. Next week, that GP will be earning $415,000, a $135,000 increase. And it's even bigger in rural towns because they get bigger incentives, Mr Speaker. That same GP in a rural town will be earning $490,000 after they pay their practice costs, Mr Speaker. Now, already 1,000 clinics have told us they're charging gap fees this week, and they'll move to full bulk billing next week, Mr Speaker. And that's on top of the 1,600 clinics that are already fully bulk billing. Now, I'm sure she's looking at her phone, but I'm sure that's something that the member for Lindsay will be very happy about, because a few months ago she asked me a question about a clinic around the corner from my electorate office, the Harbour Medical Service. She was concerned that a notice had been put up about gap fees going up. I was concerned too. And she said, "Isn't it the case that Australians need both their Medicare card and their credit card to get the health care they need under Labor?" Well, I'm happy to report, Mr Speaker, that the Harbour Medical Service next week is moving to fully bulk billing. To fully bulk billing, Mr Speaker. And I'm sure the member for Lindsay is going to be very happy that at Harbour Medical Service all you'll need is your Medicare card.
The Acting Prime Minister has the call.
And on that note, I'll ask that further questions be placed on the notice paper.